Welcome to the Bowel Chronicles, where we dive deep into the world of bowel health. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and on this podcast we have raw and candid conversations with individuals facing various bowel conditions and illnesses. Through personal stories and shared experiences, we illuminate resilience and courage in the face of adversity. Be reminded that each story is personal and unique. These conversations are not to be taken as medical advice or to replace guidance from a doctor or healthcare provider. Our aim is to inspire and empower through these amazing stories, amplifying voices often unheard. So join us as we embark on this journey together. Sit back, listen, and be inspired. Enjoy the episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Bowel Chronicles. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and today we are joined by the lovely Lucy in Dursley. Have I got that right, Lucy?
You have, yeah. Dursley.
I'm like, what's the name of that wee place? It's so good to have you on here, Lucy, today. I think we've had a couple of episodes there where we've been back to talking about bowels, but before that we had Evie and we had Amy on sharing their stories, which are similar to yours in that they don't have a stoma into their bowel; they have a stoma, which is called a urostomy, into the bladder. And I am intrigued to hear your story today because they were sharing that they had had Fowler syndrome, and your journey is different again. And obviously, when the bladder isn't working, the bowel isn't working. When the bowel isn't working, the bladder isn't working. And a stoma is a stoma. So, as much as you deal with a stoma into your bladder and I have a stoma into my bowel, it's kind of the same thing. We use
Yeah.
baths over it. It's kind of the same process. So, some people have said to me, "Oh, you won't want to hear my story on your podcast because I have a urostomy." I'm like, no, we got to get this information out there. We've got to share it.
I
So
think I said that to you Saturday when we spoke about it. I was like, oh no, because I've got the wrong stoma. You're like, no, Lucy.
yeah, and actually, when I went back on my messages, we had actually had a conversation before about this. So, yeah, I'm glad that you decided to like say, right, okay, I'll get my story out there. I mean, you're just 28 years of age, and up until I don't know, was it 2019?
2019, yeah.
When your problems started. So, kick us off, Lucy. Tell us a little bit about what happened in 2019 that you were living a normal life, and then something happened. So,
Yeah.
tell us what happened.
So literally on the Saturday, about 3 o'clock, I'd gone for a wee before I left my nan's.
Mhm.
And by the Sunday, like as the morning was going on, I was like, I'm in agony, I'm in agony. I'd stayed at my partner's and he was like, well, you haven't been to the toilet since you've been here. Maybe drink more. Maybe you're dehydrated. So I kept drinking and I kept drinking. And by like 5, 6 p.m. the Sunday, it was just horrific. And I rang my mum who was at work and I'm like, Mum, I haven't had a wee and I'm in so much pain. And she's like, well, have you drunk a lot? And I'm like, I've drunk a few litres. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know why this is happening. And she's like, ring 111. So ended up at Gloucester Hospital. Then they triage you and then you're back in the waiting room. And when I was finally seen, they were like, just go for a wee. And I'm like, I've been trying for over 24 hours. I couldn't stand up and I couldn't even get on the bed. I was like crouched on the dirty A&E floor, like holding on to the chair, just crying into the chair. And then this one doctor was like, "Oh, just give her a bed." And I was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna get some help." And then nobody comes, so I'm on the floor again, holding on to the bed, just screaming into it. And this nurse come along and she was like, "Oh, we need you on the bed to do an ultrasound." And I was like, I can't move, like barely talk. So her and my partner like just manhandled me up, and then they sent him out the cubicle. And then I was like panicking, so I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Um, and they ultrasound, and they were like, we can only see 1,500 mils of urine in your bladder. And I'm like, okay, is that the problem? And they were like, yeah, you should only have 500 mils. And I'm like, okay, can you take it out? And they were like, go to the toilet. So I crawl along the A&E floor into the toilet, nothing. I did the tap and I was like, YouTube videos of water and nothing. And I crawled back and they were like, well, we'll just have to put a catheter in. And I was like, I don't care at this point. Like, I literally do not care. Just help me. And it filled the 2 litre night bag. and Gloucester Hospital don't have a urology department. So like
Oh,
you have to go to Cheltenham Hospital, they're expecting you. And because I'd had no experiences with like hospitals on that extent, I was like terrified. So we begged him to let my partner drive me because he was like, hopefully that'll calm you down and all. And I was all right. And I got there, had a huge panic attack because I was like, I couldn't go up there. Like my partner basically carried me out the lift and they wanted me to stay overnight. And I was like, I can't do it. I have to go home. Like I can't deal with this at the minute. And they were like, yeah, we'll bring you back in 2 weeks for a trial without a catheter. And I'm like, whatever. Like I was so tired and in so much pain at that point. I just didn't care. Um, the community nurses come back to me 2 weeks after, took the catheter out, went away. 4 hours later, they were like, we'll leave it 6 hours and then we'll come back and scan you. 4 hours later, I'm like crying down the phone to him. I'm like, please come and help me. I can't go. I'm in so much pain. Catheter back in, seen at Cheltenham again, and they were like, oh, we need to do urodynamics. We'll leave the catheter in and we'll do urodynamics, see what's going on with your bladder. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I was trying to hold down my job at the time because I was like, oh, can't let work down, but also couldn't, it was that, what do I do? Um, Urodynamics come back that there was nothing wrong. They couldn't find anything. Um, so I was taught to self-catheterize,
mhm.
and every time I had to empty my bladder, I was just crying in pain. It was just the most horrific pain. Like it gives me goosebumps thinking.
Was that the idea of inserting a catheter, or it was pure pain trying to insert it because of what was going on in your body?
So
Or
I could put it in. It
Mhm.
was fine going. It was uncomfortable, but like it was okay. It was the pulling it out. It was almost like my bladder just grabbed the end of the catheter and was like, no. And it was like always like had to just yank. It was just, I'd bleed, yeah. And then I'd just try and hold my bladder longer and longer and longer. So I didn't have to.
Mhm.
My GP then decided like enough was enough, um, and got the nurses to put a urethral back in.
Okay.
And they left me on free flow, which I like as a carer. I'd never come across someone with a flip flow. So I'd only ever cared for people with leg bags. So I'm like, maybe that's just the norm. Um, and I had an MRI head and spine
Mhm.
clear.
Okay.
Um, and I was still just insufferable with like spasms and pain and infections. Um, so the urologist was like, we'll put a suprapubic catheter in. It's more discreet for a girl of your age. You'll get less infections. You won't get spasms. And I was like, this just sounds like an absolute dream. This is like ideal. So I had that in COVID when nobody could be at hospitals or
Okay. So suprapubic catheter then is through a hole in the
in your abdomen. Yeah. So
into the bladder.
yeah. So I had that and they diagnosed cystitis. And the consultant was like, oh, if you'd have stayed on a flip flow, you probably wouldn't have got that because you've lost bladder tone. I was like, what's all this mean? She was like, you should have been on a flip flow and not having a leg bag. And I was like, okay, we're like 2 years down the line. Was anyone gonna tell me?
So do you think it was you lost bladder tone because of the wrong type of catheter?
So they said if I'd have had the flip flow, I
Mhm.
would have just opened and closed that as and when I emptied my bladder. So it would have kept capacity. But
Okay.
because it was constantly draining, it just shrunk and it had no capacity. So essentially my bladder could hold 50 mils and that was like maximum. So yeah, I had the suprapubic catheter and my infections got worse, my spasms got worse. I used to have to flush it like 5, 6 times a night because it'd block. So I was sold this, oh, it's going to improve your life. It's going to, everything's going to get better. and essentially it just got worse. It was just like I couldn't even walk properly for pain. Um, like you imagine like walking down a beach, the noise of the sea would cause such incredible spasms that I just stopped going to places because I was like, if there's water, it's
Yeah.
just gonna be horrific.
Mhm.
Um, and then my doctor fought for a second opinion,
Mhm.
and I saw my new consultant, and he was like, you shouldn't be suffering like this. And I'm like, yeah, that's reassuring to know. And then that's when he offered me the urostomy, and I was just like, wow, I'd done a bit of research, um, and I think I'd already like wanted to go that route because it got to the point like I used to say to my partner, I'm like, it's this bad, I would happily end it all just to get rid of the pain. And it didn't matter how good my life was, like the bladder pain was all I could think of. It was just horrific.
It's almost like it's at the forefront of everything. There's no escaping it. It's just constant.
Yeah.
So for you, the idea of having urostomy, having the stoma created, was that just gonna get rid of all of that for you? I mean, obviously you're walking around the suprapubic catheter, you've got a tube connected to you, you've got a bag strapped to your leg. This is a whole new idea of like, okay, I'm gonna have a more discreet bag on my abdomen. What's
Yeah. And like he was saying, like, it's easier to hide with clothing. It's, you know, you're not having to change catheter every 4 weeks. Like, you just change your bag as and when it's needed, or your stoma nurses advise. Um, and he was, yeah, I used to have like blisters all over my legs from the bags and the straps. And he was like, you're getting none of that. And I was just like, can we do it now? Like, this is horrific. And like I always see people like, oh, my stoma saved my life, and I'm like, I used to say like, oh, mine didn't, like I could have lived without it, but then I'm also like, I had one antibiotic I could have for infections. I was resistant to everything else, so I'm like, would that have potentially got to a point they couldn't treat me? Or actually mentally could I have lived as I was for another who knows how many years? Yeah, it felt like I had a light at the end, and like I was very blessed. I was told in the April I was listed for surgery, and I had it in the August. So like I was so lucky with the waiting time because like, I know other people have waited like years. Um, but yeah, it was the light at the end of the tunnel of suffering.
So this you coming up on 2 years or 3 years now?
2 years in August.
In August. Okay. So what the idea of having the urostomy done was like, okay, this is going to be a game changer for me. Um, when you went into hospital, what was that whole procedure like? I mean, were you healthy when you went into hospital to have it done? Did you have infection? What was it like?
So I had an infection at the time, and I um about a year before I was had heart trouble. So like my resting heart rate was like in the 300s. So I'd had a tape recording done. I was waiting for them results. So like on the day of admission, they rung me and I was like, oh God, they're going to cancel it. I didn't have to be there till like 12:30. And I remember I was led in the bath and I was just like, this is the only bath you'll get with this catheter with bubbles and everything. So I couldn't have anything. So I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to have a nice soapy hot bubble bath. And
Mhm.
they rung me and I remember like that drop in my stomach. I was like, they're cancelling. And it was to ask me to go in earlier, and they like emphasized on the phone like nobody can come in with you because it was a new surgical part of the hospital. And I was like, okay, that's fine. um and then they go to do my heart rate and they're like, it's 250 and you're acting fine. I was like, yeah, I'm fine, that's like, we know this is a problem. So they do an ECG, and then the stoma nurse arrives and I'm like, okay, what are we doing? and they're like marking up like my stomach muscles, what I was wearing and all. And I was like mute. I just couldn't respond to her questions. And I was just like, okay, whatever. I've got a tattoo on my stomach, but I'm like, don't worry about that. Like, just think of your better life. Um, and I just remember focusing on that and just saying, like, when you wake up, you'll be in pain, but you won't have a catheter. And like I said to my surgeon, I was like, you promise you'll take it out in theatre and I won't wake up with a catheter. Like, I'll wake up with a stoma, that's fine, but don't let me wake up with a catheter. And he was like, it'll be removed. It's one of the first parts we do. And I'm like, promise me. I was like, please don't let me wake up with that catheter. And it was the first thing I asked the nurse in recovery. I was like, did they take the catheter? And she was like, it's gone. I was like, thank God, because it just felt like focusing on that was what was gonna carry me through,
Mhm.
and just thinking, yes, as long as that catheter's gone, I'll be all right. So yeah, I suppose it was very, very scary because I was on my own, and like I said to my mum, you might as well work that day. There's no point you being at home just waiting. And I sent my dad to work, and my partner, it was his day off. So I was like, you'll take me to the hospital because my sister won't drive to Cheltenham, so I couldn't ask her. And I was like, she can focus on the little one and it'll be all right.
Mhm.
And then I read like my mum set up this group so like my manager could be updated because we're close and all this. And I remember reading it afterwards, and I'm like, everyone was terrified. And like constantly reading them, like, has anyone heard? Has anyone heard? And I'm like, it's been 2 minutes for me. Like I've closed my eyes and I woke up, and then all of a sudden it's like how many people are actually like hyper aware of the long wait. And yeah, it was horrid because they take my phone. So I didn't get my phone until about 4 hours after surgery because they had to wait for porters to bring it. And yeah, it was just, I think the first thing I did is I put a photo of myself. I think I had oxygen on, like I'd only just got my phone back, and I was like, they gave me fentanyl and all, and I just put a photo of myself. I was like, I'm alive. And now I look back and I'm like, why like why did I think that was like the best thing I could do was just be like, I'm alive?
Yeah. So, how long was it until you actually looked at your stoma? I know you're elated that the catheter tube had gone, but what about then the idea of looking at a stoma or seeing it?
So I didn't want to see it, and I'd kept telling them like, can you make sure I've got someone with me? Like it'll be my mum or dad. Um, because I'd asked my partner not to visit because he doesn't like hospitals, so I didn't want to worry about him as well as myself. So I was like, don't visit me in hospital with video call. I knew my sister wouldn't drive there, so I was like, it'll either be my mum or dad, but I want them with me. Like I'm terrified. And I said that in recovery, and then when I got up to the ward, and I was like, I don't want to see anything. I don't want to know. I'm waiting for my parents. And the nurse was like, well, we just have to check. Whips the cover back. There's like one bag of blood from a drain that I didn't know I'd be getting. And then there was the urostomy bag, clear and full of blood. And I'm like, just staring at her, and I'm like, I wasn't ready. Like, where's my mum? I was like, and I just had tears going down my face. And she put the covers over and she's like, all okay, and just left the room. And I'm like, okay. So I rang my mum and I was like, how close are you? And she's like, we're literally 10 minutes away. Why? And I'm like crying. I was like, I've made a mistake. Like, I just shouldn't have done it. Like, I should have stuck with the catheter. And she's like, you're panicking, you're scared. Like, we'll be there in a minute. You'll be all right. Like, as a mum does. But yeah, it was just, I thought, like, straight away, I was like, this has gone wrong, but I didn't have the call bell, so I couldn't ring and I like anyone, and I was like trying to Google, is it normal? Um, and it was normal, but nobody prepared me for that. It was just, yeah, I was terrified, and it was ugly and it was massive, and I was like, is it always going to look like that? I thought clear bags, I didn't know there were like other coloured bags out there. So I'm like, I didn't think I'd be looking at it. Like, I was straight on Amazon ordering bag covers because I thought that was like my only choice.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So that's a lack of, I don't know, is that a lack of education just on the, I mean, I have only good reports with, or good experiences with my stoma nurses. But again, is that something that should have been shared with you of like there are different varieties, brands, colors of stoma bags out there for everyone? I know whenever you're having surgery initially, they always kind of try to put a clear bag on so they can see what's happening. Um,
yeah,
Again, educating you of like, we're working with your bladder here and your tubes. There is going to be some blood in it afterwards. It's not the same with an ileostomy or colostomy into the bowel because it's poop we're dealing with. But you're dealing with
yeah,
bladder, you're dealing with your kidneys here, so it's a completely different setup, completely different story. So pre-warning you would have been helpful.
yeah, 100%. I remember saying to one girl that I think she had her surgery like 2 days ago. I was like, it will be ugly and it will be big and there will be a lot of blood. I was like, but I promise you, like, you've watched my bag changes, you know that actually it settles down and what you think is ugly actually comes out, meh, whatever. It's just there. I was like, but please, like, don't be scared. Like, it's normal and I know that now and I wish like I could go back to that day and have that reassurance of
Yeah,
that, yeah, it is what it is and there'll be blood and like I don't know if you remember at the Christmas brunch, I think it was when they were talking about stoma placements and they were like, you can be a big part in choosing where your stoma is.
yeah,
And I was like, I wasn't educated on that. So when the stoma nurse was like, I think this is the best place, dead center of my tattoo, I was like, okay, what I don't have a choice. Like
yeah,
that's my only option. And I remember I spoke to my stoma nurse afterwards, and I'm like, could my stoma have gone elsewhere? And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, the other side, a bit higher, a bit lower, like off my tattoo. And she's like, feeling my stomach. And she was like, you could definitely have had it higher or lower. And I'm like, lack of education.
yeah.
Okay.
Do you feel now where your stoma is sighted that it would have been better, slightly higher?
I think one higher, yes, because it sits right on my fat roll. So like when I bend, it's like folded in.
Okay.
Um, and I think like from a vein perspective of having my tattoo untouched, like
Mhm.
because like, I remember everyone kept saying, well, I bet you look at your tattoo more now. And I'm like, well, maybe I do, but also like it's a tattoo for my granddad that died back when I was at school and all. And I'm like, and they're like, I bet you'd see the funny side. And I'm like, I bet you would. But then I bet you'd also be like, do you know what, kid? I know why you're upset. Like, so it's that understanding of it's our body.
Yeah, yeah.
We get that say,
Mhm.
which unfortunately I didn't know.
Did you tell me it was 2 weeks before? When were you sighted for your stoma? I know you'd seen the stoma nurses a couple of weeks before surgery, but when did they actually do the sighting for it or mark you up as being
About half hour before I went down,
okay?
I
So,
literally went straight from being sighted, walked straight down to theatre.
okay. Do you think that might have been more helpful to kind of do that a bit more in advance where you could, I mean, did they try stoma bags on you at that stage when they had marked you?
No, no. So when I saw him 2 weeks before, they gave me a fake stoma and a bag,
Mhm.
and they were like, "Oh, you can have a play around with what it'll like visually look like."
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't know urostomies are typically sighted on the right.
Yeah.
So I was trying it on my left because I was like, they're not going to do it on my tattoo, like,
Mhm.
um, completely like unaware. So I did it on my left side. Um, and then yeah, it was literally the morning of when I was at the hospital on my own. Yeah, I went straight from having it sighted to down to theatre.
Yeah, again, this is like so many different experiences. My experience was I was cited for mine 2 or 3 days before my surgery. I was cited for mine on Tuesday. My surgery took place on the Friday. They used the permanent marker, but they actually put two dots on either side. And I was like, oh, you know, I kind of was told more ileostomy would be on the right side. She says, well, typically, yes, that does happen, and more colostomy on the left. But we'll just see what works best for you, and then it will be up to the surgeons to decide.
Yeah.
But through that conversation and her marking me up, and when she had fully drawn in her circle of permanent marker, she then stuck the bag onto me. And she said, we'll just use this. Looking back now, it was the brand of bag that I am using. And she was like, well, this is kind of the standard size. We'll use this. How does this work with your underwear? Is this on the style of underwear where you wear all the time? And I was like, yes. And she said, well, will you want to tuck it in or will you want to wear it over? And I was like, right, okay, able to judge things off. She'd even said to me, wear your kind of your normal style of trousers or jeans to the appointment and we'll look at that. And she made me stand up, she made me sit down. She was like, how does that feel? It's not knocking off your leg. There was so many things to take into consideration, which I think should be everybody's experience
100%. Yeah.
when they're going through this process. And like I just hate the idea of like it was literally you have this done and you walk straight through for surgery. You
Yeah.
didn't get to trial anything out. You didn't
No,
get to kind of think it through.
no.
And like,
I like, I think the lack of time didn't give me time to process it. So I didn't think of, oh, well, I've wore comfy clothes because
mhm,
I was like, well, I'm not going to be wanting to wear jeans after my surgery, so I'll take my comfy clothes.
yeah,
Um, so I wore like big granny pants and baggy leggings because I was like, I'll be comfortable in that afterwards.
yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't wear that every day. Do you know what I mean? So I was just like, and the more I've talked to people, and I'm like, you really had a say. And they're like, well, ultimately, the surgeon could have got in and said, actually, it has to go left side. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But then also to have that almost a thought, like, actually, this is a young girl, and actually, she might wear this and she might wear that. And no, nothing. She felt for my stomach muscles and was like, have you recently lost or gained weight? And I was like, well, I've been about this size for a year now. And she was like, okay, good. Drew a cross and off I walked to theatre. And
So now you're like, it kind of gets in the way. It's like, yeah, okay.
yeah, 100%. Like I would definitely have gone higher. Um, because yeah, the bag rubs on my leg, or like, I don't know if you've seen like the M&S stoma pants, like as much as they're great for keeping the bag off my leg, they don't sit high enough, so they sit right across my stoma, so then it doesn't drain properly. I have to wear like super high-waisted like any trousers because otherwise it's like directly on my stoma. Um, yeah, it was just a mad experience. It was just, yeah. If I could have just had an appointment like a couple of days before, like you said, it just gives you that processing, doesn't it? It's just to accept that actually, and I get like your surgeon's the best person to decide. So like he could have full well have gone exactly where it is. That could have been the best place.
Yeah.
Um, and my partner was like, can't you ask for it to be recited? And I'm like, but my tattoo will never be the same because it will be then a scar from the previous one.
Mhm.
And then if ever there is a medical need for reciting, they may then not be able to do it. Like it's better to leave it
Yeah, yeah.
and just process it, I guess, and accept that it is where it is. And
Mm. Is your stoma permanent? Can
yeah,
that be, it can be reversed? No,
no,
it can be reversed, okay.
yeah. So this is it now for life, which was hard. I think I lived with the catheter in the hope that if ever my bladder did decide to work, then I had that, they could have took the catheter out. So I think agreeing to it was very permanent. It was very final. It was, a case of like, I can't go back on this. Whereas obviously with the suprapubic catheter, you could have took it out, the hole would have healed up, and if my bladder magically worked, then that can be reversed. But deciding on the urostomy, it was very much like, if I make this decision, that's it then. There's no going back. It is permanent.
What does that feel like mentally for you? We look at other people and they maybe have, um, say bladder cancer, for instance, and they have to have a urostomy and the bladder removed. But here you are living a normal life up until 2019. And as a young girl in your 20s, all of a sudden you go into bladder retention. And then you're like, okay, catheter in and suprapubic catheter. And then you're begging them to actually make this into a stoma to make it permanent because of the difficulty that the SPC presents to you. Like, with because they're not actually coming to you and saying this is the diagnosis we have for you. I know you've got other health conditions going on there. You've got polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, and as a result of all of these things going on, you also know you have endometriosis as well. Has there ever been a stage where they've came along and said your bladder stopped working because?
Never. I've never had anyone say that to me. Never has anyone said, you know, this is it. My cardiologist in the September after my surgery went right through my history, because he diagnosed inappropriate sinus tachycardia. So basically, my heart doesn't know to be out of flight or fight mode sometimes. So it'll just spike and drop. And he was like, I've read through all of this. He's like, and I have a feeling it's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I'm going to refer you to my rheumatologist. He's very good. And then hopefully that would explain a lot of your problems. And I'm like, okay, great. Just to have someone say, like, this wasn't your fault. Like, I've been a smoker, but I've never been a heavy drinker. I've never, I've always tried to look after myself. But deep down, it's almost feeling like, what did I do? Or could I have done something different? And I'm still going through that process of trying to get someone to take accountability and be like, we're drawing in all the dots. We think it is this. And if it is, it is. But like, I look at other people with a diagnosis and I'm like, I'm not jealous because I don't want a diagnosis, but I'm like envious because I'm like, why your body's failed you. Yeah, my body's failed me, and the only person I have to blame at the moment is myself.
I get that, I get
And that's been so hard to navigate.
that.
I look at my mum and I'm like, what, you got lucky? Like, yeah, you've got joint problems, but you've aged a bit and you work hard. I look at my sister and I'm like, you get to sit on the toilet and have a really good wee.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but why was it me?
Mhm.
And that, I think, has been the hardest thing to process. And when people are like, I was talking to one gent at the thing who's, oh, I've got my urostomy because of bladder cancer. What about you? And I'm like, what's the shortened version that I can tell you? Because I don't know. And I feel almost like a bit of a fraud. Yes, it's awful.
Bladder stopped working.
Literally, I'm like, my bladder stopped working and they don't know why. And yeah,
My story is the last time I had a poo was in 2019. My bowel stopped functioning. No idea why.
it's wild, isn't it? It's just like I said to my counselor, I was like, I just don't understand how someone can live without a bladder, but their bladder can stop working and nobody knows why. And she's like, yeah, I'm here to help with your mental health, not that. And I'm like, no, I'm just voicing like the bladder is an important organ and it can just stop. It's wild.
How does that happen? Do you think neurological is the possibility, or connective tissue being
I
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome?
think it's more Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because, like my consultant said, nobody can hold almost 2 liters and their bladder hasn't burst. Yours had the ability to stretch to that.
Mhm.
We're looking at like a liter can burst someone's bladder. So how did you get to 2 liters and your bladder just went with it?
Mhm.
Albeit painful, but it was able to be stretched. But yes, they did MRI head and spine and they said that looked normal.
Mhm.
Um, I wasn't a candidate for like the SNS stimulator device because where they said in my urodynamics it wasn't Fowler's syndrome, you're then not a candidate for trying that.
Mhm.
So again, it's that what if, like, would that have worked?
Yeah, but if that had been introduced very early on, rather than the SPC going in and then you losing the ability to have the bladder tone to for everything to happen, you know.
Yeah,
Let's talk quickly before we kind of wrap up about, you living physically now with your stoma. How I know it's kind of a bit of a mental battle, um, which is totally grand. It's okay not to be okay, and I think
yeah,
someone, no matter how long they've had their stoma for, were to come on here and say, "Oh, I've got it all together," you're absolutely lying, because there are days when I go, "What the flip? This is me and you forever." I
yeah.
pull myself out of that, but I still have those moments, and
Like, do you ever look at your bag and you're just like, this is crazy? Like, this is mad. And you just sort of sit there and contemplate for a minute, like, how, like, what? Like, this is it.
yeah. But I also have the other side of it where, and you probably do this too, because you weren't weeing and I wasn't able to have a poo. When I actually empty my bag and I see it, I'm like, oh my god, I'm doing it. Like,
Yeah, all the time.
how
And
are we
I'm
gonna
like,
do it this way?
I I always say, like, I don't fully remember what it's like to need a wee. It's like my brain's blocked it. But like, I always remember, like, I'd rush home from work because I'd be dying for a wee, and I'd have that wee, and you just feel so complete. And then
Yeah,
all of a sudden, I'm like, damn, I'm never gonna get that relief.
yeah, yeah.
Like, it's wild.
Yeah. But physically, how are you doing? Physically, how are you managing, you know, like with a stoma? Like dressing, going out, doing things, doing normal activities. How is it for you?
Almost 2 years, I'm yet to find something I can't do because of my stoma. Like, I've done absolutely anything that I've wanted to do. My stoma has not stopped me. One of my goals was to go swimming with my nephews. Um, and we went on holiday a couple of weeks ago and I took him swimming twice in a bikini. Nobody cared. The only person that looked was this little girl, and the mum was trying to shush her away. And I was like, she can ask questions. Like, kids are curious. And she must have been about 4 or 5. And she's like, what's that stuck to your belly? And my little nephew, who's 3, calls me Jack. Jackie goes, Jack's willy didn't work. So now she wheezes in a bag. And I'm just like, what? Like, this is wild. And I'm there talking to this 4-year-old about it. And she's like, that's a superpower.
Yeah,
And I'm
yes.
like, yeah. And like, my nephew will out me, like, Jack wet the bed last night. And I'm like, your mother has to get up every hour for a wee, mate. I'm plugged in for 2 liters. I'm winning here.
Yeah, I love that.
I
Yeah.
just, yeah, like, there's nothing. Like, I can run around with them, go to the park. I mess around. Like, our one dog, he jumps in my arms from standing, and he always has. And even like once I'd recovered post-op, I didn't even think about my bag. I was just like, oh, let's see if he remembers, like, from 12 weeks ago, jumping in my arms and all. And my parents were like, your bag. And I'm like, too late. Nothing happened. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just physically, I feel more able. Like, yeah, game changing, walking along the beach, just anything, absolutely anything. Nothing I've stopped because of my stoma. And I just wish if there's someone in this position, they can say, do you know what? In 2 years, I'll be doing all this.
Mhm.
In 2 years, I'll be able to go to the beach. I'll be able to go swimming. It does get better. And I think that's so important is just say it does get better. Like no matter how rough it feels, it always does. It gets better.
I think there are so many people out there who live with a suprapubic catheter, and when I say to them, "Is this it? Like, is this end game for you? Will that ever change to a urostomy?" And they're like, "I've no idea. I don't know. Never been told it's an option." Or they maybe have the dreaded fear of like, "Oh my goodness, the stoma." And I know for some people it can be two stomas in their case because they've maybe already got an ileostomy and they're living with an SPC. And like, I just couldn't cope. And I think it's like it's almost like a dreaded fear,
Yeah.
but when it actually happens, it's more life-giving.
Yeah. 100%. Like my partner, he'll say to me, he's like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't go through with it. And I'm like, but you have to. You have to grab that hope and you do have to run with it because there's no one else that's going to give you that hope.
Yeah,
You have to do it. Like, was the infections going to kill me? Who knows? Was I going to be the reason I went because of the situation? Who knows?
yeah,
There was a glimmer of hope, and it didn't matter that major surgery was involved. It was just focus on the now, get through it. And I remember, like, I asked my surgeon, I was about 5 weeks post-op. I was like, can I drive yet? And he was like, absolutely. And I'm like, thank you. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because I'm stuck. My car is my freedom. I have to, my friend's like, let's go out for coffee, get you out of the house. She has to drive.
mhm,
I just want to be like, I'll come pick you up in 10 and go. Like,
mhm,
but if someone had told me when I was freshly post-op, you'll be driving in a few weeks, you'll be back at work in a few weeks, you'll meet these amazing people,
mhm.
I'd have called him a liar.
Yeah, yeah,
And actually, I'm like the first one I'll be like, no, seriously, like just hold on. It does improve. Um, but it's just a long road to get there.
Lucy, I have one last question for you, and you tell me to clear off if you don't want to answer it.
No, no, you're fine.
You can answer it yes or no. When it comes to having lived life with a suprapubic catheter and now you're living with a stoma, you're talking about being in a relationship there with your partner. What is that like intimacy wise to go from living with a suprapubic catheter to then having a stoma? Like, is it a game changer? Is it?
Absolute game changer. Absolute. Like, I was so scared of letting him close to me. And I know they're both bags of wheeze,
Mhm,
but like having that catheter, it's so close. And I was just like, I don't want you near me. Like, I'm terrified.
mhm,
And I was pushing him away, the
mhm.
urostomy. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. I'm game. Like,
Yeah,
because, I can put a black bag on and feel, it's not an obvious bag of wee. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I remember the one time there was air in my bag and I was like, stop, I can hear it. And he's like, what? And I'm like, let me just get the air out my bag and we'll carry on. Like, yeah, it's just chalk and cheese from not wanting him anywhere near me to being like, I'm no different now. Like, my body's different, but intimacy wise, it's like absolutely chalk and cheese, so different now because I think because it's further away, or I don't know, you just feel different because catheters are all clear. And
yeah,
as gross as it is, SPC sites do smell like cheesy feet, no matter how much you clean it. And like, you can't smell a urostomy, like, you cannot smell it
yeah.
unless you got your nose by the toilet when I'm emptying my bag, which I should hope no one does. You can't smell it. So, like, yeah, I just felt completely different. And it was like from lights off to I don't care. Yeah, so chalk and cheese.
Give you a confidence back, if anything.
100%. And like he was like, oh, I've researched you can get like bands that cover it from vanilla blush and all this. And I'm like, I don't even like wearing my support belt. I hate that feeling of like being grabbed. I was like, no, it's out or it's nothing. I was like, I'm not covering it. I was like, no.
I tend to be a more spontaneous girl as well. I'm like, well, all that planning and effort and putting a fancy wrap around, like what? Yes, there are times somebody might want to dress up, but you know, most of the time, no, just wing it.
Absolutely not. And I think if you put in that much thought into it, is it really what you want?
Yeah.
Like, just go with the flow and yeah, and like I'll be like, hang on, you just have to wait. I've just got to empty my bag. And he's like, again. And I'm like, you didn't, I've just drunk a coffee. It's going through me. You just have to be patient. But like we joke about it because it's just like, oh, again, like, yeah, it's
Okay. So,
so many more perks.
yeah, I definitely back that 100%. Yeah. So you took to sharing your journey on social media. Just want
Yeah.
to say there, I absolutely love your handle, always have. You won the Urostomy.
My sister named it because the staveness, I was like, I want a pretty girly name. I've always hated my name Lucy. I've always thought I'm not a Lucy. So I'm like, I've got a chance here. I'm going to find a name that I would have liked to have been called. And my mum's like, no, you're always going to be Lucy. And I'm like, great. And Amy was like, you won. I was like, I don't want a boy's name. She was like, no, 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 you won. You won the battle. You've got a better life. It's you won. And I was like, that's what it is then.
Class. Really class.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. So for everyone listening, tuning in, you won the Urostomy. Go search up Lucy on Instagram, give her a follow. Guys, if there's anything that we have talked about today and it's resonated with you, or you have any questions, ping Lucy a message or myself and we will get you an answer. Remember, we're just sharing our own experiences. We're not the professionals here. It is on our own our own views and experiences.
Yes.
So, if you've got any questions as well, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, this is some of the symptoms I've got," do go and get medical and professional help with that. Advocate for yourself. As Lucy has said here, she had to fight. She had to get answers. She had to get help and support along the way. And sadly, even with the stoma, sometimes we come up against these battles with chronic illness, you do have to keep advocating for yourself. It is exhausting, but you have to remember you're a priority. You are important, and being the best version of yourself is what we will promote. And you can't be that if you're sick all the time. You have to advocate and get the treatment that you deserve. So go speak to someone and get the help. Lucy, is there anything else you want to add today? You want to drop in if someone was kind of in your shoes?
It does get better. It will, you've just got to hold on, grab every little glimmer of hope you've got and run with it and know that there is light. It does get better.
And you're absolutely proof of that in the last 2 years, there has not been one thing that you've not been able to do because you have a stoma. If
Nope.
anything, it's give you a new zest and a new confidence for life.
Yeah,
Lucy,
100%.
again, thank you so much for taking your time, coming on and sharing your journey with us today. So
Thank you for having me.
you're welcome. Guys, that is it for us today. Do come back next week to join us for another episode. But until then, it's over and out from Lucy and myself.
Bye.